Hey, friend Sean from Draft Therapy here, and on today's review for you, this is a beer take on a cocktail classic. Highball Drifter is an 11% Bourbon Barrel Aged Ale from Founders Brewing Company in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is the second release of Founders Bottle Shop series, which in an ironic twist means that you should be able to find it just about every place that Founders has sold. It's not so much limited as they make it seem. I feel like this Bottle Shop series is kind of supplanting Founders' whole Barrel Age series just in general. But this is really only the second release, so we'll just have to see where it goes from here. So let's take a look at the label. We'll get it into a glass. But first, I'd like to thank my executive producers, Brian Kramer and David Jeffries, for helping to bring this review to you today. If you'd like to become a producer, help out the channel, or hey, maybe even just buy me a beer, take a look at my Patreon at patreon.drafttherapy.com, where you can get early access to these videos and a few other special perks available only to patrons. Let's take a look at the label here. Some kind of things that I wanted to point out. So if we look at the top here, we have the Founders Brewing logo on the neck of the bottle. We move down, we have Founders Bottle Shop Series Highball Drifter Release 02. It has these two kind of bottles clinging together on the top. On the left side of the bottle, it says ale aged in bourbon barrels with orange peel and cherry. And then on the other side, it has Founders Brewing Company in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And then on the back, we have 11% alcohol by volume. This is 25 IBUs. Again, Founders Bottle Shop Series. There's a new sheriff in town. Meet Highball Drifter, a barrel-aged sipper inspired by our favorite bourbon-based cocktails. The second entry in our Bottle Shop series, Highball Drifter presents aromatics of caramel and vanilla, dried fruit and spice, while hints of cherry and bitter orange peel whisk you away like a tumbling tumbleweed. Call us old-fashioned, but we think you're going to love it. And this was bottled on July 6th, 2021. I've seen July 7th as a bottled date as well. What I wanted to point out here is that it says ale aged in bourbon barrels. Now, when I said in the intro, a bourbon barrel aged ale, when I looked online to do a little bit of research on this, I saw that Untapped, I think, calls it a brown ale. Beer Advocate calls it a strong ale. They don't mention the bourbon barrel aged stuff on that. I'm just going to go with ale, right? So who knows actually what it is. We're going to use a Draft Therapy Tiku glass today. Also, the other thing to notice is that this has a gold cap. I don't remember if the Nemesis, which was the first the first Bottle Shop beer release, if that had a gold cap as well. I'll have to go back and take a look, but whatever. Let's go ahead and crack this. We'll put a nose on it. This is paying homage to the highball. If you're unfamiliar with a highball, it's like a cocktail, right, from, older days. Not so common these days, I wouldn't think, but let's put a nose on this. Getting a bit of a cherry, bit of an orange peel aroma and a cherry. A little bit of a vanilla, but I'm also getting a little bit of that bourbon. So let's go ahead and pour this. We'll see what we get out of the glass. Coming out like a copperish kind of color, brown copper kind of color out of the bottle. It's able to pour this whole thing in here. Really nice carbonation coming up from the bottom. We're sitting at about probably 2.5. 2.5 fingers is probably pretty generous. It's probably right around 2, just a little slightly over 2. The head is a little bit of an off-white. It's more of like a khaki kind of peachy kind of color, like a tan peachy kind of color. It's off-white. It almost looks a little bit pink to me. But let's go ahead and hold it up to the light here. This beer is like super red from my perspective. To you, it probably looks a little bit more brown, a little bit more copper. With the light coming through, I can see a lot of red note coming through, kind of almost reminding me of like a maraschino cherry kind of juice, but maybe a little bit heavier than that. And yeah, not seeing really much of anything through it. Head's still hanging on there. That's awesome. Excellent lacing on there. It's just hanging on, not moving. Got something on my glass there. Let's knock that off, whatever that was. And put a nose on the glass here. Oof. Okay, now getting a lot more of that cherry, a lot more of that orange peel. Getting just a hint of the bourbon, but it's like really way underneath in the aroma. Again, that head, I just can't believe that it's still hanging on that well. So let's go ahead and give this a try. Cheers. Let's talk about the mouthfeel first. The mouthfeel is a little bit, it has like a syrupy kind of quality, but it's not quite that heavy. It's definitely heavier than medium, but it has almost a syrupy quality, just pulled back a few steps. So it's a little bit thinner than a syrupy kind of beer that you may have tried before. If you think, like, I'm like instantly putting together thoughts of like Mas Agave in my head, but it's not quite as thick as that. And let's talk about the taste. So I'll get a taste, we'll talk about it, we'll walk it through. Definitely a sipper. You definitely taste that 11%. What I get on the front, on the taste, is a bit of this kind of cherry flavor, and then a bit of a bit of that orange peel. So the orange peel kind of hangs around the entire flavor, but you get that bitter orange peel at the very beginning, maybe a little bit of vanilla, and then that kind of moves, I guess, into more of a bourbon kind of, there's just a kind of bourbon sting to it. So I think a highball is, like I said, cherry juice, orange peel. I'm sure it has a vanilla. I think it's whiskey though, rather than, I know, bourbon, whiskey. Okay, but I think it's more of a whiskey and a highball. I could be totally wrong. Never really had a highball. The highball I knew was ginger ale and whiskey, and I don't think that that's probably a real, a real highball, but that's what, whenever I heard someone refer to a highball, that's what they meant, but I'm sure that's not the traditional way. The aromatics kind of play into like the aroma that I was talking about before. You get that cherry aroma, that orange peel aroma. As you pull it up to your mouth and you take a drink and you get a little bit of a whiff of that, it really enhances the flavor that you get, really enhances the cherry, really enhances that orange peel kind of flavor, really enhances the vanilla, because you get all those kind of flavors. And then afterwards, that bourbon note kind of pops through at the very end. It's really actually, it's surprisingly refreshing. Like I said, it's got a bit of a heavier mouthfeel, and it is a sipper. It's not something that I would think that you would just, down just big gulp after big gulp after big gulp. I'm probably doing a little bit quicker of a drink because obviously I'm talking about it. But if I was drinking this in my leisure time, and I did get a 4-pack, by the way, I would just be sitting and taking sips of it. But these bigger drinks, you get a lot of the aromatics really play into the flavor that you get. I don't really get any, like, I'm trying to answer some of my own questions. I'm not really getting much of a beer flavor actually out of this, like an ale flavor at all. What I'm getting is more of just kind of a cocktail. It's definitely a cocktail inspired beer, so there is a little bit of a beer flavor in there, but I'm not really picking much up on that. What I'm getting again is a lot of that cherry, a lot of that orange peel, a lot of vanilla, getting a bit of a bourbon flavor on the back end from the bourbon barrel aging process. But I think that Founders is really kind of stepping into a league of their own when it comes to these cocktail-inspired beers, because, like Mas Agave was the first one that really made me think like, oh, this is something, they're doing something different with beer, that it's, pushing a little bit outside of the beer kind of realm, that beer comfort zone. And I think Highball Drifter here, they're kind of almost honing that craft a little bit more. So it does have a little bit of a beer aftertaste. I would think a non-craft beer drinker would drink this and say, oh yeah, that tastes like beer with these other flavors in it. But I think someone that's, used to drinking craft beer, or somebody that doesn't really pick up on really subtle beer flavors anymore because you just had so many different ones, this would be very challenging for someone that's, maybe a beer drinker to be like, oh no, it's a beer, but it's definitely a beer inspired, a cocktail inspired beer. A good sipper. And like I said, I think Founders is almost becoming an expert at these cocktail inspired beers, because this one, say what you will about Mas Agave and it tasting, I think it tastes just like margarita. This one definitely leaves you a little bit more of that beer kind of grasp to it, but it definitely is a cocktail inspired beer, and you'd be hard pressed to really differentiate this if you didn't know it was a beer. If you just thought it was like a whiskey or a bourbon cocktail, I think you could fool a couple people with this one. All right, friends, that has been Highball Drifter from Founders. Have you had this yet? Do you get excited for these bottle shop releases? What do you think about beer-inspired cocktails or cocktail-inspired beers? Let me know in the comments down below. While you're down there, if you like beer, you might want to subscribe and click that bell, because I'm here talking about beer twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's all for free for viewers just like you. And you might miss your newest favorite if you're not subscribed and getting those notifications. So until next time, I'm Sean from Draft Therapy. Thanks for stopping by. Remember, drink craft beer, support your local breweries, and most importantly, don't forget to treat yourself to a little draft therapy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by. See you next time. Cheers.